Impressive win from the Leafs as Mitch Marner busted out last night with 2 assists in the Leafs. 3-2 win over the Kings. Toronto has now won 7 of its first 9 games for just the 7th time franchise history. First time since 93-94. Once again, the league's concussion protocol became a big part of the story. Jonathan Quick was removed from the game late in the first period after a collision in front of the net. Now, he missed just 36 seconds of game time, returning to the game after what can be called maybe a brief examination from the Kings medical staff, where he did not seem to undergo any formal testing. It became a pretty big talking point with a bunch of insiders trying to clarify all the intricacies of the protocol. But my question is not intricate at all. It's quite simple. What are we doing here?
I don't know. And I think I think we need to end this farce pretty soon, because the players and the coaches are not having this. I think we're getting to the point where it's blatantly obvious.
Right.
The NHL, who's in the middle of several legal fights on concussions and the effects of, as they are trying to put parameters in place that somehow help this, players are fighting back on it, coaches are fighting back on it.
But isn't this the point of the parameters? To avoid the coaches and the players fighting back on it?
But if they're not buying in, this is what you're going to have. Like John Stevens and Jonathan Quick after that game were offended this was even a topic. Jonathan Quick was so upset. Now, he also just lost the game.
Right.
But he was rightly pissed off at even talking about this. And all I'd like to say to the players and coaches in this league is be very careful. Because what you're doing here, to a certain extent, and the more we see this, Tim, there's more examples of it. You are giving the National Hockey League something they can go into a courtroom with and tell a judge, look, we've tried this. They didn't care.
Right.
We've tried this. In the moment, there was zero regard for any future consequences. So don't tell me when the careers are done, now you care.
Yeah.
This is a dangerous game. They're not thinking long game at all here, and I get it. But this is a dangerous game the coaches and the players are playing here, because the league are not dumb. They have put parameters in place where they can make this argument down the road. And every couple of weeks, Timmy, we're seeing an example of the league being able to go in front of a judge and make the argument the other way. And the more I see judges agreeing with them down the line. So you need to be very careful about this.
I love how we went from the Venga boys to this.
That's exactly what we
But
did.
there are 2 pretty good explanations for those still wondering what the hell went on, of the 2 different ways in which the protocol is put into action. Bobby Mack did it on the 3-letter last night, and John Shannon tweeted out exactly what happened. To paraphrase, there's a difference between mandatory removal for a full evaluation and discretionary removal, which is up to the team's medical staff. Now, the medical staff is allowed to talk to the player, in this case Jonathan Quick, and determine if the acute evaluation is necessary, if they need to take him to the quiet room. And last night, the Kings staff were satisfied that he didn't meet the requirements that would force him into the quiet room. But it's not like the protocol is working. All we need to do is go back to Marc-Andre Fleury, who has a history of concussions. And October 13th against the Wings, Marc-Andre Fleury, you'll see the video here, gets hit rather awkwardly in the head, which everyone saw, and he stayed down on. Anthony Mantha catches him with a knee to the head. He stays down, clutching his head. Training staff comes out. They talk to him. There's Malcolm Subban getting ready, but there is no mandatory removal. And guess what? He hasn't played since. On the IR with, you guessed it, a concussion. Nobody's accountable on it either. Did anyone go back and say, what went wrong here? No. Have you heard that conversation?
Haven't heard anything about that.
Have you heard anything from the Golden Knights saying that our staff failed in any way, shape, or form? Have you heard from the NHL saying something didn't happen here that should happen?
Crickets.
So what are we doing here? I ask again, what are we doing here? I get things change, symptoms arise, players realize too late, but that's why we have the spotters in play, and the spotters aren't doing their job, or the players and the coaches are getting their way. Either way, there's no accountability. And I'm sitting here having done, as you know, tons of research on concussions. I've read about it, I've researched it, I've looked into it, and we should all be concerned about concussions for our kids. But if these guys don't want us to be concerned for them, why are we wasting the time?
At the end of the day, McCallum.
Is it just legal bull crap?
That's a part of it. But at the end of the day, again, guys who have worked their lives to get to this point who don't want to leave the ice and don't want to leave the field, and Andrew Shaw not telling you he's had a concussion an entire first-round series, what are you going to do with that?
I get it.
How can you change that?
But hold on a second. Well, we've changed a little bit, right?
A little bit.
Look at the NFL.
A little bit.
We've changed a little bit, and guys have come out of games that are important. Listen, Crosby game 6 in the playoffs, a week after suffering a concussion, goes flying into the boards, doesn't want to take himself out. The Pens don't want to take him out. I can kind of sort of get that, right? Like, you understand why he wouldn't want anyone to make a big deal out of this, even though he should have come out of the game. But we're talking about Jonathan Quick in Game 8, right? Game 8. Marc-Andre Fleury with a history of concussions in Game 4 of the NHL season. And no one thinks that that should be a good... Marc-Andre Fleury with a history of concussions in Game 4 takes a knee to the head, and everyone thinks, well, Malcolm Subban really hasn't played all that much, so... Just leave Marc-Andre in there.
It's becoming increasingly difficult for me to have the level of care on this topic I had 3 years ago.
So let me ask you this
I got to
question.
be honest with you.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to get to what you were saying, and I think this is kind of tying the bow on it. I would love to know how many fans, if they were being completely honest, care about this. And I would wonder how many players in the midst of their career, not after, when hindsight is 20/20, in the midst of their career, how many players do you think, like, what's the percentage that really truly care about this to the point where they'll take themselves out of a game?
Yeah.
Like when they're sitting with their family, of course. But we can't play both sides of this. We can't say, for your own good, we want to take you out. And then the player says, I don't want to come out. But when I'm home with my family, I do want to come out. You can't have it both ways.
You're either all in on this or you're not.
Right.
And what we're seeing a lot is either guys not telling people when they're dinged for the sake of being the good old boy in hockey or football or whatever.
Whatever sport,
or just completely laughing at protocol that on the surface looks kind of important and serious.
Right.
And I saw the Kings laugh at protocol last night. Let's be honest here. And as an observer, look, the Clark McCarthys of the world, my heart goes out to them.
Yeah.
It really does.
Without a doubt.
But now with all the information out there and the concern and the level of discourse here, to see what we kind of saw the last little while, my empathy meter's going way down.
No more excuses.
Way down. No more. Zero. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. And I would assume there's a lot of people getting there.
By the way, you could even argue in this one, the quick one, that he embellished the hit to try and draw a penalty. But I'll tell you how you stop goalies embellishing hits. You yank him out of the game for 8 minutes to go to a quiet room because he just clutched his head. And that, like the clutching of the head, appears in, I have the information right here, Sydney. This is all of it right here. And it says clutching the head like a bunch of times.
So if the spotter sees clutching of the head, you got to take him out.
Yes.
Got it.
After a blow to the head.
Got it.
That's where you start the mandatory removal.
Makes sense to me.
So if you want to stop, you could have a great byproduct too. You'll have goalies stop faking when they get hit in the head because they'll be worried about getting yanked for 8 minutes from the game.